On the day Benson and I got engaged, his first love jumped into the sea. She left a message online: if you want to marry her, then punish yourself by losing me forever. Facing the media, Benson held my hand and smiled warmly. I have nothing to do with her. I will always love my wife. I was overjoyed, dreaming of our future together. However, 3 days later, the usually self-disciplined Professor Benson took his own life. On our engagement day, the famous dancer Janice leaped from a high cliff. She left Benson a letter. If you want to marry her, then punish yourself by losing me forever. The letter was anonymously posted online, causing a sensation. Netizens quickly searched Janice's past. They found that in her brief but brilliant life, there was always a man who loved her deeply and cared for her fiercely. In the end, they missed each other due to class differences. This man was very likely my fiancé, Benson. When Benson heard this news, he was about to put the wedding ring on me. The media swarmed in, bursting into the engagement scene. Questions were sharp and direct. Benson, have you seen Janice's letter? Do you know Janice? What is your relationship? Flashes went off continuously, cameras following Benson closely. Everyone wanted to see a hint of anything on the face of this well-known physics professor. Benson, however, calmly replied. I saw it. I have nothing to do with her. The reporters pressed on. But someone online said you and Janice were lovers, that your love is literature come to life. What do you think? I nervously clenched my hands. This was my 10th year by Benson's side. Finally, I was waiting for his confession. How could this happen? I felt it was absurd and stood in front of the cameras, smiling as I said. We don't know any Janice. I have been with my fiancé Benson for 10 years. Today, we're engaged. Please don't speculate. After saying that, I tilted my head up, eagerly awaiting Benson's response. Benson's gaze fell low, his eyes deep and calm. Yes, I'm getting married. He tightly held my ring finger and slowly slid the ring on. In front of all the media, he kissed my forehead, his stern brow softening with tenderness. Regina, after tonight, your wish will come true. At that moment, I thought my years of unrequited love for Benson would finally see the light of day. But 3 days later, the usually self-disciplined Professor Benson took his own life. When I found Benson, he was lying in a pool of blood in his study. His eyes were closed, his expression serene. It looked as if he were asleep. Blood flowed down his wrist, staining the carpet a deep red. I pressed on his wound, crying as I called for an ambulance. The doctor said Benson still had a breath left and needed resuscitation. From Benson's blood-soaked shirt, they found an old necklace. When the nurse handed me the necklace, I felt utterly confused. Because the necklace didn't belong to me. Worse still, that night, a photo of Benson being rushed to the hospital, along with a necklace, was posted online by someone unknown. Some netizens recognized that the pattern on the necklace was very similar to the ring on Janice's finger. The speculation from days prior resurfaced. Netizens were once again in an uproar. That night, no one cared about my shock. I was covered in blood, surrounded by a swarm of reporters at the hospital entrance. Questions came pouring in. Why did Benson cut his wrist? Is it because of Janice? Is that necklace their token of love? I trembled all over, struggling to hold back my impending breakdown as I replied. It was just an accident tonight. I am his fiancée. I hope everyone can refrain from mentioning unrelated people. Yet the incident still made it to trending topics. Under relentless probing from netizens, some hidden clues began to surface. At every performance Janice had, there was always a shadow of Benson. In public, they had never crossed the line. But Janice's earrings and Benson's watch were from the same series of couples items. Even later, Benson's personal belongings occasionally appeared in Janice's photos. Sometimes it was in the morning, sometimes late at night. This led netizens to confirm that they had had an underground romance that no one knew about. Overnight, fan fiction was flying everywhere. Writers used delicate and tender prose to depict a romantic past. As for me, as the malicious third party who interfered between them, netizens mercilessly criticized me. Benson loved Janice his whole life. Why should he marry Regina? Isn't it a family alliance? Even a top-notch guy like Benson can't escape the fate of an arranged marriage? Isn't a famous dancer worthy of entering the Benson family? Ridiculous. Regina, did you see? This is the world as you wished. The hatred and curses from netizens were overwhelming. I sat alone by Benson's bedside, anxious and helpless. The few words of rebuttal quickly drowned in the tide of insults. Now, I only prayed Benson would wake up soon. I had too many questions for him. However, I didn't get Benson's explanation. Instead, I received another explosive piece of news. Single Janice has a 5-year-old daughter. A daughter? Hearing the news report, I shivered and looked up in confusion. At the moment I saw the photo, it felt like I was hit by a heavy hammer. The little girl's eyes looked just like Benson's. In those brief minutes, all the noise turned to a ringing in my ears. Listening to the beeping of the machines, I slowly bowed my head, sinking into despair. Could she be Benson's child? If so, what would happen to our child? Benson finally woke up a week after his coma. He looked calm. He explained this incident as an accident. But after days of torment, I was physically and mentally exhausted. Benson, I need an explanation that makes sense. He gazed at me with his beautiful eyes and said softly, "Sorry to scare you." As for the rest, he refused to answer. As for the rumors and gossip, they vanished without a trace the day after he woke up. His reason was, "I will give my wife the respect she deserves." This was the response I had been waiting for days. In that moment, exhaustion washed over me. I gripped the hem of my clothes. The report I had planned to show him turned into a crumpled piece of paper lying deep in my pocket. I was pregnant. I hadn't even had a chance to tell him. But at that moment, I suddenly felt that whether to tell him or not didn't seem that important anymore. Benson returned to his calm and considerate self. He prioritized me in everything. He gave me all the respect I could ask for. Friends often teased me. "I saw your picture on Benson's desk again today. Now the whole school knows you two are a perfect match." But I knew it wasn't like that. He is too polite to me, as if treating a stranger. Except for that one time he was drunk. That's called respect. You should be grateful. You'll understand once you're married. My friends all said I was experiencing pre-wedding anxiety, calling to comfort me. Before ending the call that day, a friend suddenly remembered something and asked with concern, "Regina, are you sick? I heard your fiancé Benson took the night off to go to the hospital." I was taken aback. "No, I'm not. A few minutes ago, Benson had just texted me. Working late tonight. How could he take time off?" The other person murmured in confusion, "He left in a hurry." "I thought it was because of you." Benson, who had been dedicated to research for years, never took a day off for anyone. I sensed something was wrong and pulled out the hospital address someone had sent me, taking a cab to the hospital. This was the hospital where Janice's daughter was being treated. At such a young age, she was suffering from kidney disease. She was living on dialysis. Benson must have known about this child. I recalled a day shortly after Benson woke up. Benson's mother rushed over and seemed to say something to him. Benson's lips suddenly curled into a faint smile. For the first time, there was a lively expression on his previously cold face. It was also from that day on. He stopped being negative. After Benson's mother left, he suddenly took my hand and said, "Regina, we will have a good life together. I won't let any accidents happen again. You can rest assured." The night in the hospital was deep and quiet. I hurriedly walked through the tightly shut doors and windows, cold sweat dripping down my back. As I passed by a few nurses, their conversation floated into my ears. "That was terrifying earlier. Susie almost didn't make it. Poor Susie's mom. Thank goodness her husband came." My mind buzzed. A loud ringing filled my head. Susie's mom. Janice is still alive? Realizing what this meant, I headed straight for Susie's room. Turning a corner, two entangled figures came into my view. The scene hit me like a sharp knife, stabbing deep into my heart. The pain was so intense I could barely breathe. Benson had a small woman pinned against the wall, gripping her neck, kissing her fiercely and passionately. I had never seen Benson so out of control. He wouldn't let her escape, chasing her lips, ravaging them without mercy. The woman was cornered, with nowhere to run, finally collapsing into his arms, sobbing. Benson, I can't fight your family anymore. As long as Susie survives, I'll give you up. The woman's pale face flushed with a hint of color. In the dim light, I saw her face clearly. It was Janice. She really wasn't dead. Benson's eyes were filled with overwhelming affection as he cupped Janice's face, his voice hoarse. Why did you lie to me? Janice, do you want me dead? Janice's lips trembled, like a frightened deer. It was your mother who forced me. Benson gently brushed her messy hair aside, soothing her. It won't happen again. I won't let you be in danger anymore. Janice seemed to sense something, panic flashing in her eyes. Benson, what are you going to do? Benson's tone was filled with desperation and deep emotion. I've agreed to marry that stranger. I'll do what the family wants, become someone else's husband, and watch over you from afar. You'll live a peaceful life. That night, I was sent to the emergency room due to stomach pain. In my dazed state, the words stranger woman pierced through me like a knife, leaving me covered in wounds. Curled up on the hospital bed, I tightly clutched a ridiculous report in my hands. The doctor stood beside me, frowning as he looked at my test results. Your condition is very serious. Anemia, malnutrition, stomach problems, depression. You won't be able to keep the baby. We need to operate soon. Where's the baby's father? Give him a call. Fighting the nausea, I closed my eyes and said, no need. The baby doesn't have a father. This baby was the result of an accident. One night, Benson, who usually never drinks, came home drunk. He pinned me against the door and kissed me. Facing the man I had loved for 10 years, I didn't resist. That one night resulted in this baby. Lying in the hospital bed, I absent-mindedly opened Janice's social media page. I found the date. It was the same night Janice's dance performance, Farewell, went viral. Over the years, Farewell became a legend among lovers. In her final message, Janice wrote, "You are my cure and my destination." It must have been that night when Benson made his decision, choosing to let go. They said their goodbyes through a tiny screen, separated by distance. But I had thought, that night, Benson really loved me. Due to my poor health, the doctor scheduled the surgery for 2 weeks later. He told me to focus on taking care of my body and not to overthink things. I decided to take a break from work. With the free time, I had enough space to figure out what path to take for the future. I was going to call off the engagement with Benson. But not yet. My research project was almost finished. I still needed Benson's cooperation. The day I made up my mind, I dragged my weak body to Benson's parents' house to test the waters. At the door, I overheard a conversation between Benson and his mother. "Benson, have you forgotten what you promised Grandpa Regina?" Benson stood in the cold wind, his tone indifferent. "I remember. If I marry Regina, you can get her grandfather's inheritance." Benson's mother frowned. "It's not just for the Benson family, it's for you too. Susie's treatment costs $200,000 a month, and this is just the beginning. Our company's cash flow is cut off. How will you support Susie?" Benson sneered, the corners of his lips curling up. "Do I have a choice? You're threatening me with Janice's life. What do you expect me to do? Last time, you forced her to jump into the sea. What now, another trick? Mom, you know if Janice dies, I won't live either." Benson's mother was furious. "You." Benson stood firm. "Don't lie to me. You know how determined I am." I didn't open the door. Instead, I silently returned to my car. The cold street lights pierced through the glass and spilled inside. I stared at the bustling street in silence, my fingernails digging deep into the soft cover of the steering wheel. My family and the Benson family had known each other for generations. When Grandpa passed away, I was too young to understand much. Benson had been by my side for as long as I could remember. I liked him a lot. When he was bullied, I would secretly stand up for him. When his father punished him, forcing him to kneel all night, I would sneak into the kitchen to steal buns for him, burning myself so badly I spent weeks in the hospital. For years, things like this happened countless times. Honestly, it didn't matter if he didn't love me back. I couldn't stop him from loving someone else. But Benson confessed to me. I thought he had finally noticed how good I was to him. I never expected that everything had already been priced out. By the time I realized it, Tears were already streaming down my face. For the first time in 10 years, I called my grandfather's lawyer. Why does Grandpa's inheritance go to the Benson family if I get married? After a brief pause, the lawyer said. Before he passed, your grandfather set up a trust. If Benson marries you, his family gets the inheritance. And if I don't get married? The inheritance will go to you directly. However, most of your company's shareholders have already sided with the Benson family. Regaining control won't be easy. In other words, this engagement had to remain in place, at least for now. Until I was strong enough to clean house. I started forcing myself to eat. Even if my stomach was churning and I could only vomit bile, I still had to ensure my nutritional intake. Honestly, I'm not a strong person. This process was incredibly painful. I often found myself curled up in bed at night, gritting my teeth and pushing myself toward an uncertain future. I need to get better. I have to stay alive to fight against them. That night, Benson came back. He brought a bouquet of flowers. It was a standard style from the flower shop at the entrance of the neighborhood. He glanced at the instant noodles in my bowl and frowned. You've been eating this while I'm not home? Did the maid not come? She's on leave. Benson was silent for a moment, then picked up the apron. Go wait outside, dinner will be ready soon. A faint scent of jasmine perfume lingered in the air. I never wear jasmine perfume. It must be from his clothes. I pulled out a chair and sat at the dining table, saying to the person in the kitchen. I haven't been feeling well lately, let's postpone the wedding. Benson's eyelashes fluttered slightly as he replied, in our family, we don't have a precedent for postponing weddings. If you're unwell, I can take you to the hospital. I looked at the person busy in the kitchen and forced a bitter smile. It turns out that loving someone can be acted out. Benson could pretend to love me for Janice's sake for a lifetime. When he returned, he'd bring me my favorite hand-pulled chicken. After dinner, he'd watch my favorite movies with me. When he was a little tipsy, he'd affectionately lean in for a kiss. He acted like a perfect husband. I stared at Benson's face, feeling an ever-growing hatred in my heart. Many times, I couldn't help but want to slap his hypocritical face and wish him dead. The wedding date was drawing closer every day. The matter of breaking off the engagement was urgent. My main job was as a lecturer at the same university as Benson. We worked in the same lab and were rarely compatible partners at work. But I was completely clueless about the company's affairs. Reclaiming control over the company would be incredibly difficult. The process drained nearly all my brain cells. Grandpa's employees would always shake their heads helplessly, saying, "Miss, you really have no talent for business. Isn't it ridiculous?" I resembled the inept female supporting character in a romance novel. I couldn't build my own business empire overnight. I had to face a harsh reality. To reclaim the company that Benson's family had slowly devoured over the years, I would have to use a clumsy strategy that would hurt myself as much as it might hurt them. For this reason, I deliberately accompanied Benson home a few times. I mentioned my expectations for the marriage in passing. This undoubtedly gave Benson's family great courage and confidence, believing that Grandpa's inheritance would eventually fall into their hands. At the end of the month, Benson's family launched a high-stakes gamble, wildly expanding their business and seizing opportunities. My engagement to Benson became one of the most talked about topics of the year. Just when I thought things would continue to progress smoothly, Janice showed up at my door. Ignoring Benson's protection, she appeared before me, smiling and extending her hand. "Nice to meet you, Regina. I'm Benson's wife." At that moment, I had just come out of surgery and was sweating profusely. Janice brazenly cornered me in the cold wind, solemnly declaring war. I tightened my coat and replied coldly, "Sorry, I didn't realize you were in the habit of calling a mistress a wife." Janice's smile faltered, "Regina, why deceive yourself? I've even had a child. I doubt Benson wants to touch you at all." She raised her head proudly. "I allow your existence and let Benson visit you occasionally, you should thank me." I lost my patience, grabbing her hair and pushing her against the car window. I sneered, "Is your urine mat? Open your eyes and see what qualifications you have to negotiate with me." Janice was stunned. She screamed, "Do you dare to touch me?" I gripped her tightly, my knuckles turning white. "Are you tired of living?" Janice froze, not moving at all. I leaned in close to her ear and whispered, It's not that you allow Benson to be with me, it's that you have to endure it. As long as I want, Benson can never see you again, understand? Janice's face turned pale. Regina, how dare you? I kicked her hard and got into the car, trembling with anger. Because of what just happened, my hands and feet were shaking. This was the first time in my 20+ years of life that I felt so assertive. It felt really good. I wasn't afraid of Janice telling Benson. Because she always acted like a fragile flower in front of him. She loved Benson too much to dare let him know she provoked me. And for me, this was a crucial time for my promotion to associate professor. I planned to recover my health and return to my normal work. I didn't intend to get too tangled up with Janice. A few days later, I received a call from the lab. Benson's graduate student was crying and asking me, Regina, when are you coming back? It seems our data has been destroyed. I rushed to the lab upon hearing the news. On that cold winter day, the fluorescent lights in the corridor flickered, and murmurs of students echoed from inside the rooms. When I pushed open the door, I saw several students gathered around a few computers, their eyes red from crying. Regina, your computer was also tampered with. The air was filled with a jasmine scent that didn't belong to the lab. Benson walked over, surrounded by the students, and asked softly, what happened? There were still traces of spilled milk tea on the lab computers. The scene was a mess. One student told Benson, someone just came to see you and spilled milk tea all over the desk. Not just the data, our samples have been destroyed as well. Eating and drinking were strictly prohibited in the lab. Only an outsider would dare to do such a thing. At that moment, a delicate female voice suddenly came from the doorway, slightly out of breath. Sorry, Regina, I accidentally knocked over the milk tea. I went to get you some napkins. Hurry and clean it up. A flash of panic crossed Benson's eyes. Perhaps he didn't expect Janice to show up out of nowhere in front of me. How did you end up here? Janice's face turned slightly red. After knowing you for so many years, can't I come to catch up? Seeing Janice's face flushed with excitement, I suddenly walked toward her. Janice looked regretful. It's a pity that I accidentally ruined Regina's things. I didn't mean to, Slap. A crisp slap landed hard on Janice's face, leaving her stunned. You didn't think that just saying sorry would resolve something as important as destroying experiment data, did you? 2 million in research funding, do you know how many students might not graduate because of you? Not to mention all my years of hard work. The sudden turn of events plunged the lab into silence. Janice covered her face, her eyes quickly turning red. Regina, no matter what, it's wrong to hit someone. I raised my hand again. I'll kill you. Benson grabbed my arm, saying coldly, Regina, don't cause trouble for her. I turned to meet his indifferent gaze, and in that moment, I realized that the superficial calm could no longer be maintained. Benson, you're admitting it, aren't you? He stood firm. This time, I'll compensate you. That day, under Benson's strong protection, Janice faced no consequences. Benson used his connections to bury the incident. To cover for Janice, he even took out 2 million to compensate for the losses. The students were furious, but dared not speak out, gathering each day with frowns. Benson and I fell into a complete Cold War. One afternoon, while I was busy helping students choose topics, someone suddenly rushed to me and said, Regina, that person has posted about you online. I pulled out my phone and opened Weibo, where I saw Regina the villain glaring at me on the homepage. The video captured the moment I slapped Janice from an awkward angle. Netizens were in an uproar. Oh my god, Janice is still alive. Is Janice being coerced? Who is Regina to hit her at will? Stealing someone's husband and acting so righteous about it. If it were me, I'd hit back. Benson, save Janice. I can't bear to see her suffer. Comments were skyrocketing every second. The number of people hurling insults at me was growing exponentially. I had become the villainess in the story. No one cared that my 3 years of research had been destroyed overnight. No one cared how many students had their graduations delayed or were even unable to graduate because of this disaster. They only wanted their beloved hero and heroine to have a happy ending, just like in every romance novel. Janice's incident had finally caught the attention of the Benson family. The day after everything happened, Benson's mother invited us both over for dinner. Right in front of me, she turned to Benson and said, "I threw away those things you've been keeping." This was the Benson family's way of making their stance clear. Benson's hand paused mid-air, his gaze lowered as he replied, "Got it." During dinner, Benson's mother was exceptionally patient with me. She even agreed without hesitation when I mentioned postponing the wedding. I didn't want to stay in that suffocating atmosphere any longer, so I turned and walked out. The moonlight was cold and lonely. As I stepped outside, one of the Benson family servants was carrying a box and accidentally spilled its contents on the ground. A few small items rolled to my feet. The servant hurriedly rushed over, panicking. "I'm sorry, Regina, these are things Madam wanted to throw away." I lightly stepped on a green feather and asked, "Benson's things?" "Janice gave these to Mr. Shin," the servant replied nervously. A cold breeze blew past, and I slowly bent down, picking up a few of the scattered items. One was a familiar, soft feather, something I had once treasured for a long time. Inside the box were a few pear candies, a tiny keychain, and a clumsy, unsigned love letter. "These are from Janice?" I asked. Yes, they are." Looking at their anxious expressions, I suddenly laughed. I laughed so hard that tears came out. Were these really from Janice? Just because I didn't have the courage, the things I had secretly given Benson all those years ago were mistakenly attributed to her. They were all mine. At some point, Benson had appeared. "Don't throw these away, put them in my car." The servant quickly gathered up the box and left in a hurry. I stared at the dark night sky and suddenly spoke. "Benson, spend my birthday with me." The wind tugged at his wool coat, and the lamplight flickered across his sharply defined face. His expression was unreadable. "Regina, do we really have to do this?" He wasn't even pretending anymore. His eyes were filled with undisguised disdain. I smiled. "Yes, Benson, we do. I've loved you for 10 years, I've done so much for you. You can't even spend a birthday with me?" Benson frowned slightly. "Fine." On my birthday, Benson drove me to an observatory in the suburbs to watch the stars. They say that couples who make wishes under the stars will end up together. I had dreamed of this day for years, hoping it would come. Yet, standing beside Benson, looking up at the starry sky, I suddenly felt like it wasn't all that special. In fact, it was a little cold. But seeing Benson so unhappy made me feel better. I had struggled through so many years of hardship. What was his discomfort compared to that? I snapped a photo and posted it on IG. At 10 p.m., my phone buzzed. It was a message from Janice, a photo of her snuggled up in Benson's arms, wearing a camisole, her face flushed. Judging by Benson's clothes, it must have been the night he didn't come home after his meeting a couple of days ago. "Regina, he's been mine for a long time. Even if you marry him, you're just taking care of him for me. Susie won't be our last child. How about we make a bet?" I glanced at Benson, who was still adjusting the telescope, looking for Vega. I typed back. "Are you sure? Benson's right beside me now. Guess what he's doing to me?" Janice didn't reply for a few minutes. Then she came back, demanding, "Why isn't Benson picking up his phone?" "Well, that's because he left it in the car." Janice was getting anxious, her messages full of provocation. "Susie's looking for her dad. Could you please let him come back?" I pretended not to see it. Soon after, she sent a second message. "Regina, you're being cruel. If you dare to hide this from him, you'll regret it. Susie is the apple of his eye. He'll never forgive you." I turned off my phone and tugged at Benson's sleeve. "Benson, I don't want to look at Vega anymore. Find me something else." And after that, the next few stars. One by one. By the time we got back to the car, it was almost midnight. When Benson turned on his phone, he saw a series of missed calls, and his expression instantly darkened. Right in front of me, he called Janice, his anxiety barely concealed in his voice. "Janice, what's wrong?" I could hear her crying on the other end. This time, she changed her tone. "Benson, I don't know what to do. I'm sorry. Susie is sick. I messaged Regina 2 hours ago, but she didn't tell you. Susie's really sick. Can you come over now?" For the first time, I saw real emotion on Benson's face. His dark eyes locked onto me, sharp and angry. "Regina, get out." I smiled. "It's 1:30 in the morning, and you're going to leave me in the middle of nowhere? Get out." "Don't make me say it twice." Benson threw open the door and ushered me out, then drove away without a second thought. I stood in the cold wind, watching the taillights fade into the distance. Right on cue, Janice sent another message, smug and satisfied. "Kicked out of the car, huh? Next time, don't act so self-righteous." I made a phone call. Half a minute later, a black car pulled up in front of me. The lawyer rolled down the window. "Regina, get in." I sent my chat history with Janice to my lawyer, just in case. On the way back, Benson sent me a message. "Don't drag the child into this. I don't want there to be a next time." Expressionless, I typed back. "Take a good look at your little trinkets. Inside the leaf of the Gasapon capsule, there's a ring I hid. The last line of the love letter is from my grandfather's journal. I hope you won't touch them again. Could you return them to me?" After sending it, I turned off my phone and went straight to the new apartment I had just purchased. The lawyer said, "Regina, the marriage contract can be voided soon. But this time, your company might suffer a significant loss." I know. It's a necessary sacrifice. In the past few days, I helped Benson's students draft new research topics. I applied for grants for the graduate students from poor families. Over the years, I had saved up enough to help a few students graduate successfully. I planned to transfer them under my supervision once I got promoted to associate professor. After all, Benson was becoming less and less attentive to them. The students' future shouldn't be sacrificed for their love life. The next morning, when I turned on my phone, I saw a lot of missed calls. There were also messages from friends. "Benson's going crazy looking for you. Where are you?" At that moment, I was sitting in a taxi, heading to the hospital. I had caught a bad cold from overwork, and I hadn't been getting any better. While waiting for my appointment, I scrolled through my phone and saw that today was Janice's birthday. Flowers lined the hall and spilled out onto the lawn. The party was extravagant and grand. Fans were praising her, passers-by adored her, and the flash of cameras lit up the entire scene. Janice looked like a goddess descended from heaven, delicate and ethereal. But today, she seemed a little absent-minded, staring wistfully in a certain direction. People online were asking, "Has anyone seen Benson? Today's Janice's big day." No. I thought Benson had a fiancé. Don't mention Regina. Stealing someone's love doesn't make her a fiancé. It's bad luck. Regina, remember to follow up with your doctor and take your medication regularly. The doctor's reminder pulled me back to reality. I nodded and said, "Thank you." As I walked out with my prescription, I suddenly bumped into someone. He carried a chill mixed with the wind, his voice low and hoarse. "Regina, where have you been?" I looked up at Benson's face and instinctively took a step back. He seemed to have searched for me all night. "Don't touch me. I don't want any relationship with you right now." Benson suddenly grabbed my wrist, eyes reddened as he asked, "Regina, why is it you? Why didn't you tell me sooner?" I pushed him away forcefully and threw the ultrasound report from months ago in his face. "Benson, are you playing house? Whoever the baby belongs to, you like that person. How shameless can you be?" Benson stared at the last line, stunned. In his usually indifferent eyes, there was a flicker of confusion. "This is our child." He froze, carefully touching the photo, mumbling, "Regina, we have a child." "Not anymore, because of you." I interrupted him expressionlessly. "I meant to surprise you, but the day you kissed Janice at the hospital, this child left me forever." Benson's face went pale. I laughed as I grabbed his collar and slammed him against the wall. "So, stay away from me, okay?" Benson seemed to lose all his energy, slumping in an instant. I handed him a few application forms. "Forgot to mention, I just became an associate professor. If possible, I hope you can transfer a few of your students to me. Think it over, I'll be home waiting for you tonight." I ignored him and turned to get in my car. Given the current state of Benson's family business, if I broke off the engagement, they would collapse immediately. But I still had one last thing to do. Get Benson's students. That night, Benson stayed downstairs for a long time. I stood by the window, watching as the spark at his fingertips gradually faded, then reignited, while he remained motionless. It was as if he was making a very important decision. When Benson returned, he was freezing. He pulled me close at the dining table, holding me tightly. "Regina, I'll agree to all your demands, but you can't leave me." I forgot how Benson once considered dying for Janice. And how he could resort to anything to be with me. He refused to sign the student application forms. That night, I worked hard to get him drunk and forced him to sign his name. Benson leaned back on the sofa, mumbling in his sleep. "Regina, I'll treat you well from now on. No one can bully you." How tender. If it were the old Regina, I might have laughed out loud. Now, I just wanted to distance myself from this miserable life. I took the signed application and left that very night. The next day, Benson's family received my cancellation notice. On the day I was supposed to get my marriage certificate with Benson, I disappeared without a trace. Benson called. "Regina, where are you?" It was silent on the other end. I could only hear Benson's faint breathing. I touched the inheritance documents and said, "Benson, I've thought it over. I don't want to be with you anymore. Let's leave it at that." After a brief moment of shock, Benson began to panic. "Regina. Where are you? Just tell me, and I'll come find you." I hung up the phone and signed the inheritance documents in front of my lawyer. From now on, my grandfather's company and assets would belong to me. Of course, by getting rid of some unreliable employees and destroying the collaboration with Benson's family, the company also faced huge losses. My grandfather's assistant sighed helplessly, "Regina, starting today, you need to be fully energized to keep the company afloat." At 28, I seemed to break free from certain shackles and embraced a truly mine, arduous yet ordinary life. When the lawyer escorted me out, he shook my hand. "Regina, I wish you a bright future." I felt a lump in my throat and smiled, "Thank you." After losing strong financial support, Benson's family quickly fell into debt. Their actions became low-key and restrained, fearing they'd be caught by rivals. Benson changed a lot. He was no longer the charismatic Benson, he seemed ill and often skipped classes. One day, he suddenly stopped me. "Regina, you've lost weight again." At that time, I had just recovered from a severe cold and was slightly depressed. One winter wasn't enough to heal. I took a deep breath. "Thanks to you, I almost risked my life for this relationship. I'm glad it's over between us." Benson looked pained. "Regina, you can't be so cruel." I reminded him expressionlessly, "You already have a child. Susie is innocent." That evening, I received a call from Janice. "What did you say to Benson? Why isn't he talking to me?" I asked slowly, "Janice, is it fun to take credit for someone else's work?" She paused, suddenly wary. "What are you talking about? When I was hospitalized for burns, how did you take credit while I was out? Need I remind you?" Before she could answer, I coldly said, "If you dare to call me again, I'll bring reporters to discuss this in person." This warning kept Janice quiet for a long time. After New Year's, a photo suddenly went viral. In the picture, Benson was at the observatory, pinning Janice against the railing and kissing her passionately. Under the bright moonlight, a handsome couple. This atmospheric photo climbed to the top of the trending list. Fans were relieved, Regina finally left. "Is this official? I'm so happy." After years apart, this reunion of star-crossed lovers added cheer to the end of the year. The topic stayed high on the trending list for days. "I really don't understand Benson's mindset." One student commented that Janice is clearly up to no good. Well, at least it's not us who's suffering. As the year-end approached, I moved into a new home and invited my students over for dinner. Just months ago, a few of them looked disheveled, but now they glowed inside and out. "Professor Regina. Thank you for everything you've done for us. With your help, I feel like I can keep going for a few more years." "Hey, you don't want to graduate, do you? We need to work hard for Professor Regina. I still need you for my PhD." Sitting in the warm light, I watched the joyful scene, my eyes feeling a bit teary. This was probably the first lively new year I'd had since my grandfather passed away. In the past, Benson was either working overtime or on business trips. Now that I occupied that position, I realized that the school doesn't force you to work on New Year's Eve. It was just an excuse. This year, heavy snowfall made returning home very difficult. Several students stayed over at my place. Inevitably, the house became lively. In the meantime, Janice couldn't help but text me again. "Regina, thank you for returning the perfect man to me. Actually, I've thought a lot about it. He may not like me because of the past, so you don't need to be so aggressive." I casually munched on an apple and replied, "Oh, then I'll call Benson." "How shameless can you be?" I laughed, "Not as shameless as you." Benson and Janice's first fight happened at the end of February. Janice incited Susie to throw away Benson's data hard drive. This directly led to irreparable flaws in Benson's experiment that year. He was criticized by the entire department. His admission qualifications were revoked. The guilty Susie cautiously said, "It had Regina's name on it." Mom said all of Regina's stuff should be burned. The students, having experienced 2 disasters, could no longer hold back. They proactively exposed the video and wrote a joint letter requesting the revocation of Benson's professor qualification. Originally, the online users who insulted me were attacked by angry college students. "Stop calling her a goddess, Janice is the idiot. 6 months ago, she ruined Regina's experimental samples. 6 months later, she incited a child to burn data. How come her parents didn't pass on half a brain to her?" It's not the first time. Someone brought up a report from 6 months ago. The most liked comments were still slamming me. One person complained, "I commented last time that Janice had issues, but no one listened, they all went to scold Regina. Do they really think we graduate students don't go online? A bunch of love-struck fools." Wow, I didn't realize the experiment that got ruined was Regina's. Well deserved. Why didn't Regina say anything back then? And those graduate students? The student finally couldn't hold it in anymore. "Benson's got too much power. He's covering it all up. We tried to report it, but Professor Regina wouldn't allow it. She'd rather face online harassment herself. In academia, unless you're desperate, no one reports their own mentor. I didn't want these kids, who are so passionate about research, to get caught up in public scandals too early in their careers. Risking their futures for the sake of the little justice there is." Janice quickly crumbled under the weight of the online attacks. That day, I was in the office and witnessed the argument between Benson and Janice. Janice was crying miserably, "Susie is your daughter. She just doesn't want you involved with Regina. What's wrong with that?" Benson replied coldly, "What does Regina have to do with this? Those are my research data. See? When the fire isn't burning him directly, he doesn't feel the pain. Just like how he could easily buy my hard work for $2 million. But can't accept that his own research might be destroyed. That hard drive was a gift I gave Benson years ago. My name is engraved on it. Benson's data has been on that drive all these years, so it's impossible to replace it overnight." But Janice didn't understand. Their argument ended badly. When Janice left, she shot me an unwilling glare, full of provocation. "No matter what Susie and I do, Benson will always forgive me," she said. "So don't get too cocky." I looked up from the students' papers and said, "Janice, has your quality of life dropped recently? You haven't changed your handbag in a while. Are you short on money?" That hit a nerve with Janice. She had once made a huge scene, faking her suicide by jumping off a cliff. On the surface, it seemed like she was forced by Benson's family. In reality, she was trying to ruin my engagement. But something went wrong during the jump, and she ended up injuring her leg badly, leaving her with lasting effects. Her dancing career was over. And with the fall of Benson's family, his current income wasn't enough to support her extravagant lifestyle anymore. A few days later, news broke online that Janice was planning a comeback. That day, Benson's phone call was so loud the entire hallway heard it. "Can you please stop? There's no chance your leg will recover. Isn't it better to just stay home and take care of Susie? Why do you have to keep comparing yourself to Regina?" Janice's voice suddenly grew more agitated. "Benson, are you disgusted with me because I'm disabled? If you dare go after Regina, I'll kill myself." When Benson hung up the phone, he saw me standing at the door. I smiled politely. "I'm here to pick up some student files." All of his students were now under my supervision. I had a lot of work to do. Benson's eyes flashed with a hint of pain. Thank you for all your hard work. I picked up the files and prepared to leave. Just as I reached the door, Benson called after me. Regina. I turned around and looked at him, puzzled. Benson's expression was complicated. I have cancer. I probably don't have much time left. I nodded indifferently. I'm tight on money right now, so I can't lend you any, sorry. As I was about to leave, I felt that I had been a bit too cold, so I turned back and added, maybe you should ask someone else? Seeing his pale face, I nodded again. I can only wish you a speedy recovery. Janice's dance performance had a lot of hype. So much so that her embarrassing fall from the stage during a high-energy routine became widely known. Her legs were completely ruined. She would never set foot on stage again. From then on, Janice's mental state visibly declined. At the end of March, Janice's dance piece Farewell was suddenly exposed as plagiarized. A former art school student, who had long been forgotten, posted her competition entry online. It was almost identical to Janice's Farewell, but it was from several months earlier. Janice was one of the judges back then. My art teacher told me I would do great. But on the same day, I was told I hadn't made it. All these years, I finally gathered the courage to ask Janice, how can you be at peace, stealing someone else's ideas? The public was outraged. The condemnations came in waves. First, Benson condones his wife and daughter destroying data. Now Janice is plagiarizing an art student's ideas. With people like this around, when will future students get a chance to shine? Has anyone heard from Benson's students? Don't insult us, thank you. Professor Regina is the one supervising us now. She not only spends her own money to support us, but also helps us come up with research topics so we can graduate. By the way, Professor Regina fell into depression after Benson cheated on her. She was sick for months and still worked through it. The screenshots my lawyer collected finally came in handy. Once Janice's provocative remarks were exposed, people started to realize the truth. They say Regina was the third party, but she was actually the fiancé. You probably don't know this, but Regina's family has been in decline for years. She couldn't have forced Benson to marry her unless he was willing. So, Benson's family didn't want Janice, so they let Benson harm Regina? And before that, Benson had a child with Janice behind Regina's back? Wow, that's disgusting. The online backlash intensified. Janice finally panicked. She tried to defend herself, but people only hurled insults at her. She suffered the same malicious words that had once been thrown at me. I made a phone call to my team. They told me, don't worry, we've already transferred the money to that art student. She said thank you for standing up for her. Regina, do you want to keep buying media coverage? I thought for a moment. No, let's leave the rest of the money for the student. She deserves a good life. Outside, all the leaves had fallen from the trees. The rusty tree cutter screeched as it moved, echoing in the pale winter sky. Benson had moved out of the lab. All the awards and honors he had hung on the wall over the years were gone. The walls were bare. Soon, they would be replaced with my name. I returned the gifts Benson had given me over the years. Among them was a bracelet Benson gave me when I first joined the lab. He stroked the dull diamonds and said, Regina, maybe I really was wrong. She's not who I thought she was. I stood there, silent. Benson lowered his head, his lips bitter. How could she turn out like this? Greedy, vicious, and unrepentant. Regina, if back then I had just stayed with you. Benson, did you ever ask me what I wanted? I interrupted him. Benson was stunned. I don't want to be someone's backup plan, I said. Why should I be your fallback option just because you found a path that wasn't working for you? The truth is, the greedy and vicious one is you. Regina, it's time to go. Someone lazily called out to me from across the street. Benson turned to see a man leaning casually against a car door. He was wearing a double-breasted wool coat, standing relaxed in the wind. His eyes met mine with a smile. I nodded. Next time, don't bring your problems to me. I have a boyfriend now. The wind howled. Benson's long overdue confession came from behind me. Regina, I love you. I paused, then chuckled without turning back. Is your love supposed to be something special? I no longer felt like talking to him, so I walked around the car and got in. Dan closed the door for me and gave Benson a casual nod. Then, we drove away. On the way back, I said, "Thanks for helping me with the act." Dan was driving, casually chatting with me, "Then you can pay me for my performance, or take me out for a meal." Actually, Dan's life was worse than mine. His family had fallen on hard times, and he had owed tens of millions in business debts, which he just cleared at the beginning of this year. Recently, he had finally made some money and bought a house and a car. At least I had some small recognition in academics. I had taken on a few new students, but they were a handful. My company was barely making it, but I was getting by. After all this time, my talent for business was still just as terrible as it had always been. Yet, staring out at the colorful neon lights, I felt a strange sense of happiness in this ordinary life. Just like Dan often reminded me, maybe we were all NPCs. Even ordinary NPCs could live happily. Half a year passed in a flash. Several of my students had produced results and were about to graduate smoothly. On the day of the autumn equinox, Dan organized a grand celebration party at Chill Mountain with a few students. He even sent out invitations to some close friends. It was on such a morning that Janice burst into the party with a bucket of gasoline. The acrid gasoline was wildly sprayed into the air. "It's all your fault. You took everything from me." Her expression was frantic, her gaze towards me filled with resentment. "Regina, how dare you be happier than me? Go die." Janice's legs were ruined, and she limped as she walked. Gasoline was everywhere, nearly ruining half the venue. At that moment, Benson was suffering from cancer, and Janice was drowning in debt. Susie had developed a difficult personality and often argued with Janice. She resented her for coming back to life. If Janice died, I would become her stepmother, and all my wealth would go to Susie. With Benson's indifference added to the mix, Janice had gone mad. When Benson rushed over, the lit lighter had already ignited the gasoline. The flames surged violently, engulfing most of the combustible materials within seconds. In an instant, the guests scattered. The fire roared like a raging tide, devouring everything in its path. Dan reacted quickly, pulling me back into a corner just as she rushed in. I watched helplessly as Janice was consumed by the flames. Benson stood in the center of the hall, gasoline-soaked, looking at me with a resolute gaze. In that moment, it was hard to tell whether his eyes held pain or regret. Janice clutched his clothes, hugging him from behind. The flames easily curled up toward them. That face, which I had long cared about, ultimately vanished into the vast sea of fire. Dan pulled me out through the side door. He was so strong, even trembling a bit. As soon as we got outside, he held me tightly in his arms. "Are you hurt?" When I met his vulnerable gaze, I was startled and realized he was scared. I shook my head, "No." The guests had managed to escape in time, and there were no casualties. I had just burned a small section of my hair, which wasn't a big deal. Dan held me tightly. "That's great. I almost thought that dream was real." "Dream?" "I once dreamed that you married Benson. Everyone around you was scheming against you. The Benson family, Janice, Susie. You died in a fire at 28, just like now." I gazed at the sky consumed by flames and said, "That dream sounds pretty terrifying." Thankfully, it was just a dream. Aside from Benson and Janice dying in the fire, there were no other casualties. With the announcements of their deaths, Benson and Janice's past was completely exposed to the public. Finally, the world returned to normal. In late autumn, Dan and I went to the back mountain in the countryside. The cold wind blew through, making the dry grass rustle all over the hills. Among a row of tombstones, Benson and Janice's graves were right next to each other. Dan said, "Susie died from illness. What a tragedy. Why bring her into this world if you don't raise her?" I placed a bouquet of flowers at their graves and tossed a voice recorder and an old phone into the fire pit. The wind blew, and the fire crackled as the components burned. Dan asked, "What's this?" Recordings of Benson saying Janice was selfish and malicious, along with the phone I used to contact Janice. That night, Benson had confided in me, and I sent the audio to Janice unchanged. That only led to Janice's harsher insults. My existence had long become a thorn in her side. Meeting Dan's contemplative gaze, I said earnestly, "I agree with your perspective. Maybe we're all supporting characters. What happened in your dream could be my ending. After all, back then, the insults from netizens were totally unreasonable, even to an extreme degree. It was as if we all had to unconditionally sacrifice ourselves for Benson and Janice's reunion. The flames grew stronger. The plastic shell crackled in the fire. I squatted down to extinguish the finished ashes. The only way to survive in a story that doesn't favor me is to kill the protagonist, Dan added. The wind quietly flowed between us. I smiled. To sever the foundation of the Benson family. To undermine Janice's trust in Benson. To let them escalate their conflicts in repeated arguments until they ultimately destroyed each other. At this point, the author will naturally abandon the protagonist. Ordinary people can live well. I poured a cup of wine at their graves. The wind picked up, and Dan draped a coat over me. Let's go, it's time to head home. We walked side by side along the rugged mountain path. I've been thinking, what's your role? Dan looked at me and said, maybe I'm just a pitiful passerby who loved the female lead for many years, only to be unrequited, and in the future, I have to collect her remains. I was taken aback, something stirred deep in my memory. But I couldn't recall what. Dan raised his brow, it's okay, passerby shouldn't be remembered anyway, the author didn't write it. The wind rustled through the treetops. The hills were filled with the pleasant sound of rustling dry leaves. Dan's voice faded in and out. Regina, I'm really glad you're alive. Maybe, unseen, you become the protagonist in someone's story. I smiled, then please let her take it easy and let the story end here. I want to walk the rest of the road as an ordinary person. Dan's clear laughter drifted away with the wind. She'll probably hear that.